What is a PQR? Okay, a PQR is a procedure qualification record. It's actually a document for a science experiment that we're going to do, except instead of doing it with, our guy up here, he's got a beaker or an Erlenmeyer flask or whatever that thing is, full of purple juice. We're going to use welding. We're going to weld metal A to metal B, and then we're going to use a certain welding process, and then we're going to do some tensile tests and some bend tests, and then we're going to get some lab results. And then we're going to put our lab results on our PQR, and then the PQR is going to help support our WPS, and then the WPS is going to give our welder work, is going to be the work instructions that our welder uses to build whatever he's building. Okay, a PQR is a written record. It's the record of the test weld that is then subjected to a number of destructive and non-destructive tests. It contains the record of the parameters used in performing the weld test. It documents the destructive and non-destructive test results. And after it has been determined that the test weld in which the PQR is written is sufficient, then you can go and write a WPS, a welding procedure specification, that provides the welder with information necessary to produce the results of the tested weld joint on production welds. You're basically giving him work instructions.
What goes on a PQR? What's the information that you need to provide in a procedure qualification record? Well, generally any supporting documentation, material specifications, electrode specifications, shielding gas specifications, all required testing, non-destructive testing, destructive testing. These tests typically include X-ray examinations, ultrasonic examinations, tensile testing, bend testing, and when required, impact testing. Might have chemical testing in there too, corrosion resistance. So a lot of different things that you can have on here. But a PQR is you need to hit all the essential variables for whatever code you're working to, and then the required examinations. You're putting together a case, court of law type thing. You're putting together a document that is going to support your WPS. You can't have any holes in this. This needs to be tight. This needs to be airtight. So you need to include all that information, all the information that is required by your code or your customer specifications and requirements and documents. They all need to be in a PQR.
Okay, format. Don't freak out. Welding codes don't require a specific format. Most of them don't. So a lot of them just say suggested. So as long as it makes sense, and for ASME Section 9 or AWSD 1.1, as long as you address all the essential variables or supplementary essential variables, you're good to go. But format, don't get too tied down in format or freak out on formatting. In my younger days, I was like, what in the heck is this garbage? And then my boss was like, walked me back from the cliff and said, all right, dude, format doesn't really matter, just as long as they address everything. They don't even have to spell it right. You just got to get it in there. I don't know if spelling right is correct, but whatever. But formatting, don't freak out, is the bottom line. Okay, so formatting, don't freak out. So you can see here we've got two different formats for our PQR. The one on the left is a little more traditional. That's from, ASME Section 9. It's the recommended PQR format. Doesn't mean you're stuck with it, but it's a place to start. You use this, you're probably going to have good success. I worked for an outfit back in the day. Anyways, they did everything paragraph style. If you look on the right, you've got this procedure qualification record, and it's written in more of a report or a paragraph form. So anyways, there's different ways to approach it. Just as long as you address all the essential variables and when required, non-essential variables, and get all the laboratory test data on your PQRs, you're good to go. So younger days, like I said, freaked out a little bit on somebody's WPSs and PQRs because their format didn't match what we had going. So anyways, something to think about and take a look at. Okay, so a few ground rules for PQRs. Even though we're not talking about writing PQRs, we need to understand if we're going to review PQRs, we should probably understand some of the ground rules for PQRs. Don't change anything on a PQR other than to perform corrections or do an editorial change such as spelling errors. This is not a live document. This is like a birth certificate. Person A was born in Butte, Montana on this day, blah, blah, blah. Done. It takes an act of Congress to go in and change any data on a birth certificate. You better really have your stuff in one sock if you're going to go do that. So we don't do changes to PQRs. It's not a living document and should not be updated. Changes to a PQR are not permitted as it is a record of the actual data used at the weld test coupon. You can do an editorial correction where an incorrect variable was indicated. Editorial corrections are not reformatting company name changes nor the listing of new or revised WPS references. An editorial correction is going in and fixing typos, doing that kind of stuff. If you want to change something major, you need to do another PQR. If you wanted to use another filler material, whatever, you don't just, do another filler material and then add something to this PQR. You just do another PQR. That's the best, cleanest way to do this. Okay, so changes to PQRs continued. Addendum changes are permitted. An addendum to a PQR is a change resulting from a code change. An example of an addendum change could be the assigning of a new F number to a filler material. Let's say they changed the F number of your filler material or of a base material. Base materials seem to change a lot. It might have been, especially when you get into like the chrome, the P5A materials, a lot of times things will change. They'll split them off or merge them or whatever. There's a whole zone there. I'm not going to dive into it. But just know that F numbers and P numbers can change for materials. It's not super often, but it has happened in the past. So you might want to go in and put, an addendum to it that says, hey, this is what changed. Or also, you want to have a log. I've got a log here that has listed on, revised from original format, blah, 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 to this format. Cleaned up document due to formatting errors. That kind of stuff. If you're going to do changes, you want to list it on a log also. Not a bad route to go. Additional data may be incorporated into the PQR provided that information is substantiated as having been part of the original qualification condition by lab record or similar data. So if there was like something that was left out on the original qualification and then you found it in a lab report or whatever and you can prove it, then you could add that in. But other than that, you really don't do changes to PQRs. Changes to PQRs. Again, what if a company's name changes or you go to a new form? Okay, so for a company name change, two methods are commonly used. You include a letter explaining the reason for the name change as a cover page for the PQR, or you can transfer all of the PQR information to a form with the new company name, include a letter explaining the reason for a name change, and then I'll attach all of the existing documentation, including the old PQR. So you're going to leave a trail of breadcrumbs for whoever follows you or whoever is reviewing this documentation. And also, if you're the person reviewing this documentation, you might need to inform other people, hey, you need to get your act together and this is how you do it. For a new form, transfer all of the PQR information to the new form and attach all of the existing documentation, including the old PQR. You want to have all this because PQRs aren't going to be circulating. They're just going to be in a file. Generally, I have them in a file and then I scan them in. So then I've got an electronic copy and then I've got the hard paper copy from yesteryear. So you want to keep, companies get bought out, spun off, all of this stuff. So you just want to, keep some continuity so somebody isn't lost in the alphabet soup of the name changes for these types of situations where companies get bought out and bought, sold, and traded.
On this slide, you can see we talked about essential, supplementary essential, and non-essential. Well, let's say for gas tungsten arc welding, this is from ASME Section 9. You can see where I've pulled up the little grid there, or the little chart. So you can see the essential variables and supplementary essential and non-essential. So when I write a WPS, I have to put everything that's an essential and a non-essential. So I need to address, on a WPS, I need to address all those little check marks. Every little check mark, I got to say if I did it or didn't. So like let's say for method of back gouging, I'd put in there grinding and cutting, or grinding and abrasive wheels, or whatever, chipping, use of a blowtorch, or use of a carbon arc gouging. And I know those are extreme examples, and you probably wouldn't use those on a method of back gouging for a TIG weld. But I'm throwing it out there. You need to address it. You need to have something written down that address it. Or you just say none. We're not going to back gouge. Method of cleaning is another biggie. You don't have to address that on the PQR because there's no check mark there under essential, right? But you have to, it's purple, so it has to be on the WPS. It's over in that purple row. So method of cleaning, you'd put that, grinding, wire brushes, use only stainless steel, use acetone, use specific cleaning methods. Don't use carbon steel brushes to contaminate the stainless steel. Whatever you want to put in there, you just have to address it. Orifice and cup size. So these all are the non-essential variables. A lot of them are instructions to the welder so that the welder can make a sound weld deposit utilizing your process, and he's not wandering all over saying, well, orifice and cup size, I can use anything I want. No, you're saying you can use this orifice and this cup size. That's it. Stringer or weave bead. Nope, I don't want a weave. I want a stringer this wide. Or, electrode spacing, or whatever you've got. Peening. Generally, any ones I've ever seen have been no peening. I've never run across peening. It's obviously out there because they listed it, but, for when weld procedure I ever wrote it, I just no peening. Just in case somebody was thinking of peening it. But, or for like electrical characteristics, the type of tungsten electrode, but I'm kind of getting off track here. Supplementary essential variables, you can see there's only 4 of those that you'd add for impact testing, heat input, and the current or polarity. Those you don't have to address those on the, if you don't have impact testing on the PQR. But if you're doing a PQR where there's going to be impact testing, you have to address all those supplementary essential variables. So I hope this kind of sorts out the essential, supplementary essential, and non-essential variable vocabulary alphabet soup for you. On this slide, you can see the GMAW weld procedure, essential, supplementary essential, and non-essential variables. In all codes, they have different formats for telling you what your essential, supplementary, and non-essential variables are. But when you're qualifying a weld procedure, you need to look at the code you're qualifying it to and what the code requirements are. What are the variables you need to keep track of on the PQR, the WPS, and how you need to explain those and document them. The different codes have different requirements.